Anybody could say, well, to go from 500 followers to 100,000, man, that takes years. I could have said the same thing, right? I could have said, yeah, it's gonna take that long, but it didn't.
This social media algorithm lottery is a lottery, and it speaks to your level of commitment. You couldn't manipulate that, you just trusted. You shifted your frequency, and then the form of your life shifted.
It's the perfect example for frequency precedes form. Because I was in that very moment. I let go, and then it happened in a way that I couldn't have predicted.
My life changed drastically when I started asking for help. It didn't make me less of a human to admit that.
Makes you more of one. It makes you more human.
What you imagine in your future and what I imagine in your future, the only difference is I have a more compelling future for you. Both are made up.
There is nothing there's only imagination.
What is time? Like, what is this quantum reality that we live in that is not based in linear progression? It really speaks to this new paradigm that we're shifting into with people that, like, anything's possible.
Aloha, and welcome to another episode of the Embracing Human podcast.
Before we begin the next episode, I'd like to take a quick moment to ask for your support in helping us grow our podcast.
Take a moment to like, subscribe, or follow on whatever platform you're watching this on.
Your engagement helps us to grow our platform as well as allows us to invite even more interesting interviews in the future. I hope you enjoy the following episode and wish that you gain insight, clarity, or knowledge about what it means for you to embrace being human. Welcome to another episode of the Embracing Human podcast. Today I'm your host, Scott Stone, here with a very special guest, Sven, who I met through the world of social media, technically speaking, and I guess tangentially through an online coach academy led by a mutual friend and coach, Matt Kama. And this man, Sven, is a transformational and relationship coach. He is an excellent content creator and just an all-around swell human being that I've gotten to know over the past couple of years. And I'm really excited to have you on the podcast, Sven. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you for that introduction. I feel very humbled, very flattered by what you're saying. I'm very honored to be here, and thank you for having me.
Yes, you're very welcome. And I want to jump right into kind of how we first met, because it's something that I feel like everybody now is attuned to, which is social media and viral content. And I'm curious your journey of social media and how you came to find this niche of content that you found yourself in.
That's a tricky one. So I knew I always wanted to speak about relationships. And there's so much content out there, which, right, I know, everybody knows there's a lot of content out there. Maybe when I started, it wasn't as crowded in the field. Actually, when I started my business from the job that I worked before, I had a huge list of post ideas where I just kept adding every day, where I was like, I want to speak about this. I want to speak about that. I want to speak about this. And then I had a few ideas that I said, like, I'm going to save them for when my account is a big account. And those were especially ideas where I thought I'm going to be a bit more funny. I'm going to be a bit more outgoing. And I knew that content is right. I got really excited about that content, but I tried to save it, right? I said, I'm going to post it, right, maybe when I have like 5,000 followers, maybe when I have 10,000 followers. And then I don't know who, someone somewhere said something like that and said, yeah, and we pretend like we need to keep our best ideas because we will never have more good ideas. I was like, oh yeah, I'm doing that. I'm totally doing that. And then I really tuned into myself and inquired, why am I keeping these ideas to myself? Why am I not showing that? And ultimately it was fear, right? It was a scarcity thing. Until one day I just sat down and I filmed those videos. And those were maybe 10 videos dialoguing between one person and another person. And I added my own twist to it. And the video number 4 that I posted was the one that hit, I think it was 3.7 million views. And my Instagram, right, at the time, honestly, I had 500 followers.
Wow.
And then within weeks, I went up to over 100,000, and it was completely overwhelmed because I didn't have these numbers, right? I knew that was possible, but then all of a sudden seeing that, I was completely overwhelmed. But ultimately, it was with these ideas that I thought I would post them when I have that big account, and it showed me in retrospect that those were the posts I needed.
Yeah.
Right? That would get me to the big account.
Right.
So then, yeah, I hit a nerve, and I kept, right. I knew this was quote unquote working, and I just kept doubling down on it and kept producing.
Man, what a it's like your subconscious knew that those posts would go along with the viral account, the account with 100,000 followers. And it's funny, you know, like you're like, I'm gonna wait till I get there, but lo and behold, that's what got you there.
Yeah.
And yeah, go ahead.
I didn't even have the concept of or I didn't even think, oh, this one could go viral. I didn't consider that. And funny, there's something I want to add to that. And what I felt, because I had this, right, this rather small account, I thought, what I'm saying, if I say that now, it's gonna get lost because it's not gonna reach too many ears. Right? And then posting it. And actually, the funny bit that I wanted to add, I posted that video and it went viral 5 weeks later because some influencer reposted it. And then one person reposted it, then another one, and then I had like 30, 50 story shares each day.
Yeah.
So it was 5 weeks after that,
Wow.
at 4 or 5 weeks after I originally posted that video.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it's such a great reminder that like this social media algorithm lottery is a lottery, and it speaks to your level of commitment, not your level of like, you couldn't manipulate that, you know, you just trusted.
Yeah.
And in that, you like, you got what you were coming for. And it speaks to something that, you know, a fellow coach that we both follow, Peter Crone, like speaks on, is like this frequency precedes form, you know, like you shifted your frequency and then the form of your life shifted.
Absolutely.
Can you speak a bit to how that influences the way in which you work with people?
Yes, I can. And again, I want to add something because those, right, I said 5 weeks after I posted that video, on that very day, I took a few decisions, right? At the time, I still was living in Germany, but I was on vacation in Bali. And I was traveling with a friend, and we were also partying. And I was on the edge of, I actually don't really enjoy drinking or going to parties anymore. So then I found myself with my friend, because it's a very dear friend. I wanted to join him on these parties, but I didn't feel at home. I didn't feel right there. And then I made this one decision to say, I'm going to stay here in Bali longer, and I'm going to see how it is to work from here. And that life with alcohol is over for me. On that very day, I spoke with my now girlfriend for the first time, moved to Bali, my Instagram blew up. Like, it's all of these things happened on one day.
Wow.
And I feel that happened because I made that decision to choose myself, to choose who I and what I want to be. And the second thing is, I let go of the idea that I needed that big account, or that I needed to create. And so it's the perfect example for frequency precedes form, because I was in that very moment. I let go, and then it happened in a way that I couldn't have predicted. Right. And that's the same thing, speaking to your question, that I help people see, that the moment they change, right, who they are, they change how they see themselves, they change their frequency, that's when they will feel differently, they will think differently, they will act differently. And based on that, they will have very different ideas, which can get them to the very frequency they've just reached in that moment. Right? Or that's equivalent to the human being that they can now be. Right? I, as an example, I didn't do things, or I didn't choose, okay, I'm going to drink alcohol so I can, right, my friend still likes me and that we're still friends. I chose me regardless of that. And my friend never said don't want to be friends with you anymore. We're still very good friends, and I love him dearly, and he loves me dearly. So, right. But it was that decision to choose me that then shifted everything.
Yeah, and I love that. And I remember when I first found your account, I don't even know how or why. I don't even know if I followed Sarah at this point. I think maybe it was through Matt. But I remember when I first saw your bio or something, the way you had talked about relationships, of like it's all about relationships. Like we relate to other things, and helping people see that the most important relationship we have with is ourselves.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
tell me about what that was like for you, like investigating your relationship with yourself. You talked about, letting go of alcohol and noticing the relationship you had to that, which therefore the one you had to yourself. What was that journey like for Sven?
So my journey started several years ago when a relationship ended. In that relationship, I'm just going to speak to the way that I perceived it, because ultimately that's not how it was, but that's how I perceived it, right? I felt like I was doing so much for the relationship, was doing so much for her. And then the moment that I asked for something in return, which was commitment, the relationship ended. So then I went to my first coach, first therapist, and spoke about it. And I could see just in that very first session, I've never done any other work before that point. So it was the first time that I got to experience what I actually think of myself. And the words that I found in that very session was, yeah, I think I'm not good enough. Right? That's the feeling that I get, right? I do so much, but it felt like it wasn't ever enough. So I'm not enough. Right? So in that very first session, I noticed, well, that's the relationship I have to myself, right? I could see I'm treating myself as if I'm not enough. That's my relationship to me. And then for whatever reason, I took that with me and I kept thinking about it. And then there was one day that was very profound for me where I sat at work and I was preparing a presentation for a high-level executive of the company. And I knew how I was sitting there and I wanted to impress him, right? And I just observed my thoughts. I thought, why do I want to impress him? Because I thought if I convince him that he thinks I'm a great guy, I'm a cool guy, then for a second there, I can also experience that. I can buy into it. I can feel good about myself. And in that very moment, I notice what I'm doing. I notice I am trying to convince everyone around me that I'm good, I'm cool, I'm great, so that then they can tell me I'm great, and then that must mean I'm great. But I noticed that who I'm actually convincing is myself. So I just in that very moment, for whatever reason, it clicked for me that I could just say, well, but if I say I'm already there, then it's over. And then I started crying, I started breaking out in tears, right? And then I had this feeling of, I mean, anything is possible. And I want to give this feeling to other people. That was the moment when I ultimately decided I'm going to change my life. I'm going to change what I'm doing. I'm going to change however I'm living. Yeah. And then I understood, right, in that very moment that is the relationship I have to myself. And that leads to many problems in my actual relationship with other people. So I understood that that's the very thing we get to look at if we want to improve any relationship. And that's how my journey started with that. And then layer after layer, because that was just the first one, seeing, okay, I treat myself and I see myself as if I'm not good enough. And fortunately, there are so many of these ones that I got to uncover over the time and still do, right? This work isn't, I don't feel like I'm at the end of it, but it always comes back to the outer world around us reflects the relationship we have with ourselves. I thought I'm not good enough, so the girlfriend that I have, at least what I perceive her narrative is, you're not good enough, so you're not good enough. Need to do more, need to improve, need to do more, need to do more. Right? And all of that was reflected in my life.
Right.
And the idea was very clear to me that the thing we get to look at, I get to look at with my clients or with anyone who wants to do this work. Let's see how you actually see yourself, how you actually talk about yourself, feel about yourself. And if we change that, everything changes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's beautiful, and such a good reminder for folks that like it is the outer world circumstances that do mirror our inner world, because most
Yes.
oftentimes we're like, no, this is the problem, right? Everything out here, the
Yeah.
way I like to put it is, the first thing we'll do is we'll change our environment, whether it's our location, our occupation, or our relation,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But the problem is then we're perpetually a victim,
Yeah.
right? That
Yeah.
everything is
Yeah.
happening to us. And so what do you think is the hardest thing about people getting to that self-exploration? Because we see so often in ourselves or in others, like, no, they're the problem, they're the narcissist, they're the whatever, insert statement. What do you think it takes for someone to get to that point where they're willing to take a look at themselves and become responsible for their circumstance?
Well, first of all, it's so convincing, right? That the outside is the problem. I think that's where it already starts. That it's so easy to, right? If after that relationship that I was speaking about, when I went to my friends and then I would say, "Look, guys, this is how my girlfriend treated me," then they would all say, "Oh God, man, oh poor you, man, oh good that you went out of that." So that was my first try of breaking out of that relationship, right? It was all her, right? I'm the saint here. She just treated me very poorly. So I used that approach. I think 9 months later, I got back into a new relationship with that same person. So it was the very same person. It was the same woman I broke up with, or she broke up with me, right? Because I only did, well, the problem is out there. And then a few months later, we broke up again. It didn't work out. And then I really sat down, and it takes a lot of, I think it takes humility, and it takes a lot of, I would say it takes a lot of courage to then
Mm,
ask, okay, if I give up that story that she's the villain, how am I contributing to this dynamic? What
mm,
is it in me that is inviting that is doing that? And it's hard because then I got to confront all the ways in, for example, I would complain that she lied to me. Well, but I lied, right? Because I pretended to be someone that I'm not. Then I would complain that she looked down on me. But trust me, how I look down on her is just as much, right? So those were things that I didn't want to know about myself. I didn't want to hear about myself. But the courage to look at that and to really question that and see, all right, why am I doing this? That's the hard part of this work, I suppose,
mm-hmm.
because it's not pretty. It's not. Now I cannot go to my friends and say, look, guys, I like my ex. She was just like really terrible. Now I had to say, yeah, look, she did that and I did that. But with at the same time, I could also write the whole world of forgiveness is obsolete because I could just say, well, you did that, I did that. We're in the same boat. I think it's hard to admit that.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly was for me, but it was the most freeing thing I could do because
Mm-hmm.
only by doing that I could open up what became available.
Oof, yeah. Oh, it's courage. I love that point. It's that feeling the fear and doing it anyway, it, meeting our
Yeah.
partners in the fire of this all. Like even last night I was cooking with my partner, and I said something that I could tell, like I knew as I said it. I said something that made her laugh, and she's like, "Where did that come from?" And I told her, and I could see the trigger because it came from my last partnership, and she was like, like, and she
Yeah.
just like shut down. She like,
Yeah.
we were cooking, and all of a sudden she was like sitting on the couch scrolling her phone.
Yeah.
And I was like, how you doing over there? And she's
Yeah.
like, I'm
Yeah.
checking out. And I was like,
Yeah.
okay. And I finished cooking. Like I didn't like run to the damsel in distress. I was like, okay,
Yeah.
that's what your nervous system needs right now. Great.
Yeah.
And then I came over to her and was like, hey, like how, like, could you tell me a little bit more about that? Like, when do you feel like you checked out?
Yeah.
And this part of her that, it's and I had the same part. So I feel like I'm not oversharing, is that feels conflict and wants to run away,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
to just meet her in that of like, hey, I'm here with you now. I'm not going anywhere,
Yeah.
and to just sit with her as she felt these tears. And, for me to feel like I am a different man, like,
Yeah.
because it takes a lot of bravery to sit and be like, yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, I like to run too, especially
Yeah.
in the face of conflict. Like,
Yeah.
whoo,
Yeah.
that has taken a lot of work. And I admit that I wasn't that before. In
Yeah.
my past partnerships, I was not able to sit in that fire. I was like, nope, I'm going to go get high. Nope, I'm going to go
Yeah.
watch porn. Nope, I'm going to go work out. Nope, I'm going to go do breath work. Nope, I'm going to go jump in an ice bath. Like,
Yeah.
and to meet in that container of transformation is such a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you don't look at that, if you say, well, no, she or my partner is the problem,
Right.
you don't ever get to face that. You don't ever get to do anything about all the things, the distraction that you mentioned, right? Ice bath, which is probably one of the quote unquote
Yeah.
better ones, but yeah, right. And it takes courage to do that, and then to lower yourself, right? If we want to use that terminology, to lower yourself and say, yeah, I have a lot of dirt too. Right.
Yeah. I'm curious your perspective on, I follow other accounts about relationships and masculine feminine dynamics and,
Yeah.
sacred union and all this stuff. And a lot of accounts talk about how women are leading the awareness charge, the self-awakening and all that. And men have so much work to do. And, when you talked about this courage thing, it just kind of pinged something in me of like, what's Sven's perspective on, you know, the masculine feminine dance, and is one leading, is one following, and just kind of how you see that relationship dynamic of awakening.
Yeah, I think there's something to say that I agree that ultimately the woman or the women are leading in the awareness space, and they need the man to hold the space for that, right? If we just looking at my own relationship, there are many ways in which my partner Sarah can point out to me where I don't have the awareness, or where I'm doing something that upsets her, that makes her angry, or where she can feel that I'm not in integrity with myself. Now that's not pretty to hear, right? So that when she reflects that back to me, but I'm over and over again and again, I'm astonished by the accuracy that she can hit me with things, and it, like in the same time, like I can go into shame or I can go into defensiveness in that very moment. But when then I have time to think about it, to reflect on it, then I go back to, yeah, there's something to it. So and where I would go with that in the dynamics now between the feminine and the masculine is the feminine is helping the man, yeah, to reach more of his potential, right? And by the woman showing, hey, that's where you're not in integrity, that's where you do this, that's where you don't have me, you don't got me, that's where the man gets to step up. It's very difficult because very often I could also just say, well, or you're too sensitive, right? Or, right, anything, right? I could throw anything in there that would make it very easy to say, no, you have a problem. But then it's, right, it is sometimes it's so humbling to take a moment, pause, reassess, and see we hit the nail on the head. And by me doing that, by the masculine accepting that and holding the space for that, or also for the women's expression in general, then she gets to grow in that department. And then by virtue of her doing that, I can grow again, right? In a way that the sensitivity of a woman can wake up the sensitivity in the man and help the man, right? And I see this. So then, of course, I'm the man leads in terms of space holding and safety, and the woman can nudge the man to, right, to grow in wherever he's complacent, or wherever he's lazy, or wherever he doesn't see it. There are many moments when I if I didn't have my partner, I wouldn't even see that about myself, right? I hope that answers your question.
It does, and it reminded me of two things. One, one of my favorite quotes about relationships is, "Men protect women in the physical realm, women protect men in the spiritual realm."
Yeah.
Which is to what you speak about, right? Like this idea, like, what I like to say is, every man wants a conscious relationship until his woman is calling out his lack of integrity.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Like every dude's like, yeah, like, look at us in sacred union, until she's like, yeah, bro, you're not keeping your word.
Yeah.
like, and it's like,
Yeah.
ugh, well, who are
Yeah.
you to point out my shadow, and
Yeah.
I think to your point, like one of the things my partner Amber would say is she's like, okay, fine. Like in my version of my disassociating or running away, she's like, fine.
Yeah.
You don't want to do this relationship, don't. But like, just know that this will be waiting for you until your next relationship.
That's the thing, yeah. And that's what it ultimately does. That's what happens, right? I can choose to confront it now, or it's gonna come down the line. I can't run away from it.
Right.
That's not possible. Not
Right.
even with all the drugs and all the alcohol that's out there. It's
Right.
coming.
Right. And it's we talked about ice baths earlier, and I've gone the gamut. Like I've been addicted to drugs, and then I was addicted to breath work and then ice baths, and like and
Yeah.
and to see this journey of unsustainable to sustainable to coping mechanisms to learning how to not cope with my life and how to meet it head on.
Yeah.
What do you find? I guess I'm curious if you work more with women or more with men, and what you find to be the thing that fucks them up the most.
So I would it's probably a bit more women, but it's almost 50-50.
Mhm.
And then in terms of trends, I mean, the thing is, because of who I am and who I am as a man, I also attract a certain persona into my life. So the people that I tend to work with are rather similar. So I also attract a lot of men that, similar to me, have a sensitivity, have a right what we would call a strong feminine side, but they also have a very strong masculine side, right? And what I find in women as well as in men is that especially the intuitive, the feminine qualities are very toned down,
Mm.
very much in the background. And then what drives someone's self-worth, what drives someone's feeling of safety is all the accomplishments that they see in the world, right? It's the job, it's the achievements in, right? And then we get to explore where that's coming from.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think I tend to attract people that do have a strong sensitivity.
Mm-hmm.
And I enjoy that because that's what back then, that's how I was, right? I was that person. And I set out to say, I want to help people exactly like me.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, my very first thought but what I talked about at the beginning, when I had this strong experience, I made a promise and said, I'm going to help people like my mother,
Mm.
right? Because I thought, oh, there's someone that could experience this too, and that was driving it. So
Mm-hmm.
now I do attract people like that,
Yeah.
and people that generally they are high achievers, that are smart, that are quick, and that have like, yeah, very similar to my own profile from the past.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You mentioned a word that this just pinged me. You said we find out what's blocking them, and then we go figure out why it happened and whatnot. And then you said attracting people like your mother, and I'm curious, does it always go back to childhood wounding?
No, it doesn't always go back to childhood wounding. It is, I'd say, it is the most potent place for these patterns to begin, but you can pick up a pattern much later in life.
Yeah.
I for myself, one of the patterns I picked up was when I was 20, 21. So no, it doesn't have to. Think about it. It can also happen when someone is an adult, or quote unquote adult, maybe
Sure.
someone who's older of age and experience something like losing, or that a child is passing away. That can be something that triggers a deep fear for someone, that people are leaving, people are dying, right? I would
Mm-hmm.
say generally these things start in childhood or
Mm-hmm.
in the teenage years, but they don't have to.
Mm-hmm. For people who are interested in diving deeper into their relationship with themselves, but can't maybe or don't see it yet possible to invest in a coach, what are some of the tools that you have found or that you meet people with when they're not ready for that level of investment?
So one thing that I think I didn't have as much access to it as you have nowadays is You can check out a lot of coaches and therapists online that have free workshops, right? Where you get an idea as to what people are doing. Then I always suggest like stick to the ones that you feel drawn to, right? Because not everything that you see out there is for you and is necessary and is needed. So stick to the ones that are really appealing to you. And then journaling, right? Where you just assessing like the way that you think, the way that your thoughts are developing, and the way that your thoughts influence your feeling. And then of course, books. I have read a ton of books. That was at the time when I started this journey, I read at least one book a week, right? And then those were big books and very interesting books. And then ultimately I found a way, or found a certain way that people look at these problems, these issues, that resonated very deeply with me. Yeah, and I mean, I for example, you yourself, I don't know if I saw it on Instagram, you had this offering right at the beach where you do, I think it was even breath work and ice bath, right? There are opportunities to do this work, and to do it for free, and there's so much content to consume out there on Instagram, on TikTok. I think if you really want to do it, you can. And I also want to say, if someone says, I want to do this work, but I can't afford it, maybe there's a way to look at that statement. Is that really true? Or are your priorities are your priorities different right now, right? Maybe you're saying, okay, I need X amount in my bank account to feel safe, right? Let's say I need whatever money that I can't spend, right? Is that really true, right? The money you spend into working on yourself, it's going to come back in multiples, many multiples, right? Because it's so valuable what you can learn about yourself, and you can take that to any area of your life. And of course, there are situations or financial situations where it really isn't possible in that moment, right? And then set the intention, save the money, and eventually you'll be able to do that.
Yeah, that's a good reminder for a lot of people that, and sometimes it's not having the money and being like, I'll figure it out. I remember the first coach I hired was $25,000 a year, and I had no idea how I was going to pay for him. Like literally zero.
Yeah, exactly. I had many moments like that. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
I quit my job, started my business, and then I saw, well, what I'm doing here on Instagram doesn't work. I need to hire someone. And then I looked at my bank account. I was like, I can't really do that because I need this money to pay for my bills, to pay for my rent. But I can't figure this out by myself. So then I took that money and I invested it in a coach. And then throughout a few weeks of working with that coach, I made so much more than I had invested.
Right.
But that came only because I did the investment.
Right.
And I like what you said, right? You didn't have that money, and somehow it worked out.
Right.
Because it always does.
Right.
It always does.
It's so interesting. Like I'll share a personal story just because it's fresh. The fun part about this podcast is it's small, so I can say these things right now. But like a couple weeks, or like a couple, let's say like last year, I had been running on savings. Like I moved to Hawaii, and I sold my house, and so I was like, all right, I'm gonna figure this out, grow my coaching business. And I said my bank account is gonna have to go to zero. And I remember just being like, dude, like to those parts inside me, like, stop it. Like, why are you doing that? Like, we don't need to go broke. And it was like, no, we do, bro. Like, you need to see that you're not going to die if you run out of money. And I was like, but I know I'm not. And it was like, but you think you are actually. And I was like, ugh, okay. And I did. My bank account hit zero. And a few days later, I sold my car and I had another $10,000 in my bank. And so it's just like, what? Like, what is time? Like, what is this quantum reality that we live in that is not based in linear progression? But the old paradigm is like, no, fear says A plus B equals C plus D, and you have to walk the path this way. That's the only way it makes sense. And, that's what we teach in school. So that's what you're going to know. it really speaks to this new paradigm that we're shifting into with people that like, anything's possible.
Yeah, and in a split second, things can shift so quickly. I mean, imagine how many friends said to me, "Well, Sven, you're gonna need a lot of time, and you need a lot of savings to sustain yourself until you can make money from your coaching business." And at the time, I was like, "Why? Like, where does it say that? That's just something someone says. But is that right? Is it a truth, that statement? I don't believe so." Right, and then anybody could say, "Well, to go from 500 followers to 100,000, man, that takes years." I could have said the same thing, right? I could have said, "Yeah, it's gonna take that long," but it didn't. It took 5 weeks, right? Of course, there's a lot of work that happened before that, but these things aren't true. And in the same way, right, you can hit zero tomorrow, and then a day later, three people can come into your realm and say, "Scott, I listened to that really cool podcast episode with Sven. I want to hire you." Right? Anything can happen.
Right.
That's it. Yeah. And
Ah,
it's very often it's we who block it
yes.
because we say, "Well, it doesn't happen." And no matter how you twist it, it's still you who creates it, because you say, right? Either you say it's possible, then you're right about that when it happens. But when it doesn't happen, you're right about that too,
Mm-hmm.
right? You
Mm-hmm.
still believe, you just believe something, or you hold on to something that isn't very inspiring.
Right.
Still the same thing.
Right. Right.
Right? Yeah.
So another favorite Peter Cronin quote of mine, he's like, what we're both imagining in our future, like what you imagine in your future and what I imagine in your future, the only difference is I have a more compelling future for you. Both are made up,
Absolutely, yeah.
and
Absolutely.
and it's, go ahead.
There is nothing there. There is nothing that, right? There's only imagination. Right? We can make up something and say, "Tomorrow I'll sign 3 clients." And if I really feel that, and if I really think that, and that I have that knowing, but similarly, I don't have the attachment to it. Things can happen, but even if they don't happen, it can still feel good. Well,
Yeah. It's so interesting because, last time we spoke and I was talking about kind of what we're talking about of like, I just want my profile to go viral because and you were like, well, yes. And
yeah. Yeah, virality doesn't help. Yeah. Especially not in that realm.
tell me about that journey. Just, I have a lot of friends who are coaches and a lot of followers who are coaches, and just let's pull back the veil on the virality curtain.
I'd love to. So if we look at the content that I went viral with, there is content where in a time span of 50 seconds, 40, 50 seconds, I share insights. I share, yeah, something where that someone can take to a realization. And then they look at that video and think, "Oh, great. Oh yeah, good. Right? Now I learned something." But the way to actually get that, the way to embody this teaching takes a lot more than just looking at a video. And now if you look at the content that goes viral, especially currently, that's content that's very surface level, very shallow, which is the same thing. Maybe it's controversial, where then people start commenting, "This is so wrong," or this is so true. But the value that's being transported with it is so low. And you and I both know that the actual transformation doesn't happen in front of this screen, doesn't happen throughout a video. It works, or it happens when you do the deep work. And when I set out back then, it was like, I want to reach so many people and I want to help so many people. If I now look at, okay, I reached many, many people with these videos, but I actually didn't help them with it, because the actual help would to tell them, go and do this work. Don't do it like you do it with me or do it with someone else, but do it. That's where you get the help. So now the way that I see the shift in how I speak to people, how I create my content, is to show them that in order to do this work, really work with someone. That's actually helping, right? There is no, it's so attractive to just say, okay, I need 100,000 followers, because when I have 100,000 followers, I will always have clients. it's a very different thing to speak to people who want to work with someone than to work with people who want to follow, right? And I basically attracted a lot of people to my profile that just want a little funny video that says, oh yeah, okay, my doses of self-development or self whatever work is done. And then they don't follow through on it. And that doesn't really help. And now speaking to people who want to do this work, who are in this work, right? I like to speak a lot. I like to work with people who have already done work, who've seen some progress, right? It's not the real basics anymore. Because I assert the real basics, you can get a lot of that from books. But then when you're ready to do this work, to face your shadows, to say, actually, now I replaced smoking with ice bath. That doesn't really change anything. I'm ready to do this, right?
Right. Oh, it's such a good reminder of like, and I can resonate with, like that type of clientele of, for a long time, like behind me is, or behind you, so to speak, is hundreds of books,
Yeah.
Tony Robbins and Napoleon Hill and all
Yeah.
these guys. And, that was the beginning of the journey, was like, I'm going to figure out why I don't like myself,
Yeah.
like what is wrong with me, so to speak. And
Yeah.
then I got to a point where, it was the weed or the alcohol turned into breath work and ice baths. And then when my dog died, nothing worked anymore.
Yeah.
It wasn't, I couldn't ice bath or breathe my way out of my problems.
Yeah.
It, like my parts were just like, that's funny, bro. Watch this. You're no longer interested. Get out of the ice bath. Like, and it was just like, I don't know what to do. And thank God, by the grace of life, I had already started internal family systems therapy for probably like a year and a half at this point before Chester passed. And that was like, okay, I am supported already in this. And then I only went deeper. Then I hired a somatic therapist, and then I hired a movement therapist, and just tripled down. I did an entire year with 3 therapists, technically four if you count the horse, because I had an equine therapist as well while I was in Hawaii last year, while last year. But this need for a really exquisite mirror, and I feel like there's so much gold in that for people. Like if you're a high level performer, or if you're someone who wants to make massive stride, find someone who can mirror back your, whether it's languaging, your trauma, your story, someone who is actually so present with you. They're like, hey, you notice that this is just what's coming up right now.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's where massive stride is made.
Absolutely. Right. If you can get to the thing that's driving the pattern, right? When you get there, like why you attract the relationship that you attract, why you come up to the same ceiling in whatever job you're doing, why you keep having the same arguments, right? There is a reason for it, right? And the reason is you. And you are the reason why these things show up. So you're the key to it.
Mm-hmm.
And you can find it. But yeah, and you need a good mirror for that. And I can say, even though look, I've done so much work, I still can't say I can see myself. Like I can see because these are blind spots. I'm not able to see it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I asked my girlfriend to help me with that. I asked my coach to help me with that, therapist with that, because I can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not able to.
Mm-hmm.
And the quality of that mirror or of that person that can help you with that can make a huge difference.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, I 100% agree. And I feel like my life changed drastically when I started asking for help, when I admit I didn't know everything, and that was allowed. It didn't make me less of a human to admit
makes
that.
you more of one. It makes you more human because you're honest, right? You're honest to yourself. You're honest to your surrounding. That's vulnerable. We all are. We're all just scared to be heard. We're all just scared to be all of these things. And to then say, hey, I need my fellow humans to achieve this, to achieve that, to be happy in life. That's awesome because you're allowing someone else to contribute to you. And we're humans. We're social beings. We're not solo beings.
Right. Oh, I have such a a rub with the lone wolf idea of masculinity of like, no, dude, do it alone and you don't need anybody. And I'm like, bro, good luck. If
Yeah.
that's your strategy, good luck.
Yeah, and look, there are so many countless examples. When you really listen, is when you hear people speak that you could argue that in the material world they have achieved a lot of things. Very often, the very first thing they say when they have a speech, when they have a toast, is they turn around and they say, maybe they don't turn around, maybe they just point at someone and say, "I want to thank my wife. I wouldn't be here without her." Right? And that's the closest relationship in many cases, the closest person in many cases. It's an excellent mirror,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you embrace that and doing that on your own, like I don't think that's possible. I just recently I saw a post from Alex Hormozy. Maybe you know that guy, and he said something. I don't remember the names, the numbers fully, but he said, before I met my girlfriend, my now wife, I never got over 3 million USD in revenue, and 9 months after I hit 10 million. Right? Not that you need to earn so much money. That's not what I'm saying with it. But the woman, the mirror, helped him see something, helped him do something out of his comfort zone that he was in. Yeah.
I saw a similar post. She was like, stop doing the things that don't make you money, bro.
Absolutely, yeah.
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 I'm curious. So we talked about like taking it to the next level and hiring a coach. What have you found? Because you've, I'm sure, hired many a coach for yourself and
Yeah.
also have many people coming to you to look for your coaching support. What have you found to be some good questions to ask yourself and the potential coach to make sure it's a good fit?
So if I'm looking for a coach,
Yeah.
what something that is incredibly important and has always been important to me is how I feel with that person, right? Do I trust them? And that's much more a feeling than something you can gather through a question. Of course, you ask them a question, you can see by the way that they answer, is like, does that seem trustworthy? Can I trust you? Can I trust them? That's for me is always number one. Can I trust them? Do I feel comfortable with them? And then you can ask yourself, does that person have a relationship that I would like to have? Or does that person have a life that I would like to have? Right? What is it in that other person that you want to have for yourself? Right? Because if you, it's very, very simple example, but if you want relationship advice, you don't go to someone that helps you with your money stuff, right? But similarly, if you seek help from someone around relationships and that person, and I'm not saying that there's something wrong with it, right? If that person that you consider working with has a polyamorous relationship and runs away from commitment, but you want a monogamous relationship, it doesn't fit, right? The goals don't align. One of the things that I have found for my own way of choosing the people that I work with is they turn up naturally, right? There's something in the way, oh, this video speaks to me. Why is that? Why? There's something about this person. I can't even quite say what it is that draws me to them. Let me explore what that is. And you start somewhere, and then from one person you go to the next one, then you go to the next one, then you go to the next one, or you stay with one person for longer. That resonates deeply. Yeah. So I would say, can you trust them? Do you feel comfortable and safe with them? Yeah. Do they have what I want? Or do they embody what I want? Right? Because also someone that is a relationship coach, you don't necessarily need to have a relationship to be a good relationship coach. Because if that person has a very healthy relationship with themselves, then that can be very, very strengthening for yourself to have. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You
Those
said,
are questions I would follow.
yeah. Yeah. To distill it down, I heard it and it was in a different order, but it was the same three things. The first one was feeling.
Yeah.
What's the feeling you have with them? The second one was fit. Are they the
Yeah.
right fit for the life that you're inspired into? And
Yeah.
the last one was something between flow and follow through.
Yeah.
Like, do you trust? Do they keep their word? Are they
Yeah.
showing up in a
Yeah.
way that is like, yeah, I feel good about this? And
Yeah.
those three really like hit me as the leading indicators to yeah, like leading our intuition into that relationship, because it is not a small endeavor to help someone help guide, you know, another individual on that path.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And for that, it's so important to just also because of how this work works, I would assert at least, it can happen that right you have something that you want to work on, and then you hire someone that doesn't embody that or that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't really have that. So now you could hire that person just to end up in the same place,
Right.
right? And then you can use that, and that's where it becomes very tricky, as a justification for that thing to not work out for you,
Right.
right? You
Right.
hire, let's imagine you hire a business coach, but that business coach is a business coach because they just sell, right? There's the typical I coach to coach coaches, right?
Right.
I'm sitting here, I tell you, this is how you sell $10,000 packages. If you want to join my program, that's 10,000. The trick is, well, I charge you what, right? And then you need to charge that to someone else.
Right.
But that doesn't work, right? And then someone could get very disheartened by working with someone like that. And then they would say, well, for me, it just doesn't work out. See, I had this coach, it doesn't work. And then they get disheartened, discouraged, and stop.
Mm-hmm.
So really look at that person. Yeah, and I'm a big believer. I'm a huge believer on people's intuition is very on point. The problem
100.
isn't people's intuition. The problem is that they don't listen to their intuition.
Right. Yes.
Right? So they have this feeling, right? It's one of the most interesting things. It's always a very tricky situation when a client comes to me and says, yeah, and I was in this relationship and I really didn't see it coming. And I sit there and I'm like, really? When was the first time you noticed something was up with that person? And then, yeah, like at the end, and I was like, okay, let's go a bit earlier. When, like, do you remember an earlier situation? Usually they can go back to the very first time they meet that person. Oh, yeah, the very first day I actually noticed. I was like, you see, your intuition is on point. You
Mm-hmm.
know it in your heart. You knew it, but you
Mm-hmm.
didn't listen, right? So feel, that's why I say, how do you feel with that person? Does that really feel like that is the person? And then do it.
Mm-hmm.
I have made many, many, many of my decisions in my life based on that. How do I feel? Does that feel like that's in alignment here? Does that really feel like? And then trusting that it works.
Mm-hmm.
Your intuition is on point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I 100% agree with you, Sven. I've had multiple experiences that life was just like, this is it, bro. This is it.
Mhm.
And I'm like, but I can't make sense of it. And it's like, who said anything about making sense of it? Like,
Yeah.
that's old world. That's mind, that's fear, that's illusion, versus like feeling and corporeal experience is like, that's real. You
Yeah.
can't not feel that. And yeah, I feel you on that one. I remember when I first signed up for the Peter Crone Mastermind, it was the day before the mastermind closed. It was $6,000. I
Yeah.
also didn't know where the money was going to come from. And I was like, I have to do this. I'll just
Yeah.
put it on credit. I'll just run
Yeah.
it, you know, and we'll see what
Yeah.
happens. And literally the next day, 2 days later, started. And I was the first guy he calls on, blows my brains all over the wall, you know, and like, and I
Yeah.
wrote 2 years before on my vision board, I wrote work with Peter Crone,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know,
Nice.
and
Yeah.
like 2 years later, it was like, here you go, you know, it
Yeah.
was like, oh, okay. Like, and I see those things now, even of like, this feels really right, or this doesn't feel really right. And it's like, okay, well, you gonna listen, you
Yeah.
know, and it's interesting, you know, like the whole, you know, it's not that people don't feel it, it's that people don't listen to it. And what I have found is that even when people come to me and they're like, I don't trust myself, I'm like, okay, well, tell me
Yeah.
about your intuition, though. The intuition still knows.
Yeah.
It's not even that they can't trust their intuition. It's just like, I don't trust listening to it. It's like, okay, well, tell me where that started.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's it. And then usually the interesting thing with that is usually the intuition did say the right thing,
Mm-hmm.
but the person chose to overwrite it,
Right.
including myself, right? I had my own experience with that. I felt the very first moment, I was like, something is off here.
Mhm.
I chose to not listen. And then, but now in retrospect, it taught me so much, because now I can look back and say, wow, my intuition is so on point. It's so accurate. What if I let that run my decisions? And honestly, for me, for my life so far, best decision ever.
Mm.
I like the moment, even the moment that I decided I'm gonna fly to Bali, right, where the vacation I spoke about. I was running in Hamburg, where I lived at the time in Germany, and on that run, I just had a random thought and said, "Hey, I could go to Bali and join Matt Karma's program." So I came home, texted Matt on Instagram, was like, "Hey, do you run your program at that time?" He said yes, and I said, "All right, I'll book my ticket." Then I went there, and that's where I found my now partner, my girlfriend, right, on a beach walk, right? I couldn't have scripted that. I couldn't have made up, okay, yeah, my girlfriend is I'll probably find her in Bali. But something in me told me, go there, do this, stay here, don't stay here. Awesome. Yeah, I think it's a very when the moment you can see that, and then you spoke to it, the moment that you see you can trust your intuition, you just didn't.
Mhm.
You can.
Mhm.
Then a big door opens up.
Mhm. On
And I
that
love
note,
that. I love that you also followed through on things like that. I've watched your story, how you moved to Hawaii, and then we spoke for a while. So that's it's admirable, and it's very inspiring, right? Because now you can also help other people to do that same step.
Mhm.
It doesn't work if you say, well, why don't you just trust your intuition? And then they say, but Scott, did you? And you, no, no, no. I'm like, I am, no, but you did, right?
Right.
You did. And now that's helpful for other people to take the same step,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
That's with the embodiment again.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I had that conversation with a client yesterday. I was like, well, we were doing this like future forecasting vision work, and he was like, it felt like really reasonable. And I was like, okay. I was like, what feels really good? And
Yeah.
and he was like, ah, man, you know, and I kind of let it. I was like, maybe you quit your job and you travel and you go live your life.
Yeah.
And he was like, God, that feels amazing. And I was like, okay, like maybe just as an exercise, see what it looks like. Like, what does it feel like to live in that world? And he got so excited. And I was like,
Yeah.
look, just as a disclaimer, I am not the guy who's like, okay, here's plan A, and it's this leads to this, leads to this. I was like, I
Yeah.
quit my corporate job on a whim,
Yeah.
like I was very successful monetarily, but I didn't like my life. I had to
Yeah.
justify going to work, and
Yeah.
all my energy was spent on making sure I had enough energy to do that job. And then,
Yeah.
all the way now here, like I live a completely different life. And it isn't necessarily easy. It's just different and fulfilling and beautiful. Like I feel very rewarded in what I get to do.
Yeah.
And I told him, I was like, look, dude, I'm not the guy if you want to live like a typical normal life. Like if you
Yeah.
want to live a beautiful and on your terms and adventurous life, like I'm your dude,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and I'm not here to tell you what to do. Like I'm here
No,
to
no.
say, like, what do
Yeah.
you want?
Yes. Yeah. Brilliant. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm curious. So back to this idea of like intuition leading. So you're no longer in Bali, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
What led that decision? Like, or I mean, obviously it's your intuition, but
Yeah.
what is how has life changed over the past year, and what are you calling in for this compelling future now?
So we were on Bali, and originally I came to Bali with a desire to connect with like-minded people and to find my tribe there. But I didn't find that there. I didn't feel like those that what I'm looking for, I find that there. And there was one particular trip that I remember for myself. I had just moved to Bali, properly moved to Bali, and then I went home for Christmas. I went to Europe for Christmas. And I just felt this I feel more at home in Europe. it's again, it comes back to a feeling where I'm just, well, I love being outside. I love going for walks. I love just spending so much time outside. Now you would think, well, Sven, you live on a tropical island in Bali. Like that's where you can spend time outside. But actually it's too hot for me. It's too hot for me. It's too busy for me. The people that I met there weren't just weren't my people. And then my girlfriend, Sarah, she had the same. She felt the same things. And then in the end, it was actually her who said, I want to move to Europe as fast as possible.
Wow.
Right. And I said, well, okay, let's, right. Then I got into, how about we do that in blah, blah, blah in 7 months? And she's like, no, like now, let's do it now. Like, what are we waiting for? And then that's honestly, that was one of the presents, for example, that she could give me. I was like, I was confronted with my things like, oh, but when we live in Europe, then things are going to be more costly. It's like it's going to be a different lifestyle. I can't just go to gyms that I have here, right? I came up with all of my stories, and she was still saying, I want to leave. I want to leave. And I trusted her to say, for whatever reason, that's on my path. And now we went to England, which is her home country. We were not in the area where she comes from, but we're in England, not my home country. But again, now I'm here, and it feels good. It feels just right. And it also felt right to trust her with how she said, Sven, I just feel it inside of me that we need to leave. We need to leave now. And for me, it felt good, right? It felt good to,
Right, great.
right? I didn't get the no, alarm, don't do. I just okay. I can't say I feel ready for it, but all right, let me work with that. And now I'm here, and it's awesome. It's amazing.
Man.
So now we're here, and then people were asking, so what are you gonna do next? Where are you gonna are you gonna settle down then? I'm like, I don't know. Let's see. Let's find out.
Yeah.
And then a few weeks back, maybe 3 weeks, 2 weeks back, we started looking for houses here. That's what we're doing.
I
Yeah.
love that. I love that in this aspect of I truly believe that women are the portal to God, whether you call it the universe. I mean, they are literally connected to the other side of something that brings life through them like that. And to have the woman be like, this is what I feel, this is what I want, you know, and to be confronted by, you know, in the hero's journey, right? The answering of, you know, here's the call.
Yeah.
And the first thing the man does is refuse to answer the call. Like, actually, you know what? I don't want to do that. And then, you know, we ultimately answer the call.
Yeah.
You know, and it might take, you know, a couple times of sticking our head in the sand or running away to the cave, but like ultimately we answer the call.
Yeah. And look, I mean, I could come up with, and I did. There were things that I said where like, but look, the you can't find happiness in the outside if you're not happy on the inside. So right, I could hit her with all this stuff, and she said, no, I know all of that too. This is we still like this is not the place for us. All right, how you said, and then I answered the call, and then she gets the feeling that I trust her. The trust that's mutual. It's so important that that's mutual. Not that she trusts my leadership in the areas that I have them, but I also trust hers.
I'm curious just because I've never been to Bali, and I know Bali has changed over the years. But another curtain I want to pull back is the difference between social media Bali and living in Bali. What's that like?
So when you live in Bali, you see a lot of social media. That is for sure. What is really beautiful in Bali, like one of the things that drew me there, is the people and the culture there. So the people are extremely welcoming. I believe that that's one of the few places in the world that is very feminine. It's a very feminine country. Very welcoming. There's virtually no aggression from Balinese people. Like that someone gets angry in traffic. If someone gets angry in traffic, it's a Westerner. Like someone from Europe, from America, from Australia. So the people are extremely welcoming. But now what that led to is it's so easy from the West to come to Bali and invest into properties, invest into cafes, invest into restaurants. There's a plethora of really, really, really well designed restaurants, and the cuisine is exquisite. It's awesome, right? Everything is Instagrammable. You can take pictures of your food, of the surrounding, all beautiful. But it's built on the backs of Bali, on the backs of that land that is there, because where they all built these houses, these properties, is on old rice fields. Right? So there are rice farmers, right? And someone that is a rice farmer, you can imagine they don't make a ton of money. But then someone comes from USA, comes from Australia, comes from Germany, from Russia, and says, I'll give you $40,000 for your land for the next 30 years. And they're like, oh my God, that is a lot of money. I will never make that amount of money. I'm going to take it. Thank you. Right? Then they take 40,000 for someone from the West. That's nothing. Then they build 15 houses on it. They sell it. Right? And the Balinese people can't live there anymore. And then, of course, the 40,000, they don't know how to deal with that 40,000. It's gone very quickly. So, and then you have the cheap labor costs that are in Bali, meaning that, right, the low price power that people have in Bali and the low economic power that this country has, as a ballpark, just to give you an idea, if you hire a gardener that comes twice a week, you pay between $80 to $120 per month, right? Per month. So that guy shows up 8 to 12 times during a month and gets $80, right? So the lifestyle you can live there is so much higher. And then there's this showing off, or is this, hey, look at my beautiful life. But that life isn't, I feel it's not real, because it's built on the backs of other people. And for me, that doesn't feel right. Didn't feel right. That's something that I didn't enjoy about living there. And then there's a huge community of actually of a lot of coaches that I don't agree with their teachings, to put it very simply. And then they say, live this beautiful life that I live here, but there isn't that beautiful life isn't really, that's not something worth achieving, but it's sold as that. And it doesn't, right, that's where my part is. I don't, it doesn't feel like I'm integrity with that. So I wanted to leave. So there's a beautiful part of Bali, which is the people and the countryside and the beaches that are outside of all the tourist zones. Amazing, really. The people, it's incredible how friendly, how welcoming, how accepting these people are. But unfortunately, that's also their weakness, because they don't stand up for themselves. Right? The Bali needs more of what the West has too much. And the West needs more of what Bali has too much.
Reminds me a lot of Hawaii.
That's another example. Yeah,
very similar of how mainland America comes here and unlimited capital and just destroys the aloha way of life and does it on the back of the Hawaiian people and culture for the sake of making money. And it is really hard, like a lot of people, like the amount of times I've gotten texts of how's living in paradise, which I get, like it is beautiful. And I'm like, there's a part of me that's just like, guys, like the zip code is not it, and but back to being in Hawaii, right? Like the amount of landscaping people do is so dumb. Like it's constant, and nobody can eat from their yard, but it looks beautiful. Like there's a bunch of non-edible plants, and it's just like, this is not it, guys. But it's I think there's one theme, not the only, but one theme that sticks out from this episode is really peeling back the veil, the illusion on all of this stuff. The illusion on, oh, the problem is out there. The illusion on, I can't, like I'm not worthy of that life, or I'm not good enough. The illusion of what social media is portraying is the lifestyle. And I really appreciate your commitment to for your own self first, actualizing what that life you want is, but also helping other people on their path to understand what they want to find. It
Yeah.
is, I think, some of the most important work we can do right now is help ourselves and others figure out what fulfillment looks like over success.
Yeah, or right, if we just change the whole conversation on success, right?
Right.
I watched an episode, or all three episodes. I'm a huge tennis fan, from Carlos Alcaraz on Netflix,
Oh, okay.
right? Which
Is that Breakpoint?
beautiful. No, it's called My Way,
Okay.
which is very, very describing, or very on point for this episode also, right? And he says within the documentary, he says, I want to be sitting at the table with the big three, big four, if we put Andy Murray in with it. But from what I've seen so far, maybe that means I have to live unhappy.
Mm.
And I want to live like, I want to be happy, because happiness is success already, right? The definition of success is up to us. What do we think success really is? Is success making money at the cost of your own well-being, or of your peace, or of your happiness, health? I don't think that's success. I think success has way more to do with that, and then money will be there.
Yeah, one of my favorite definitions of success is from Tim Ferriss, which is how I feel about myself when I'm by myself.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that was, my mom asked me, this was probably 10 years ago. She asked me because I was quitting my corporate job, and wow, that was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Whew, time
Yeah.
flies. She asked me, she was like, Scott, if success isn't what you're aiming for in life, what is it? And I was like, peace,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
to be okay with myself when I don't have the allure and the grandiosity of the matrix, and that for me is so poignant
Yeah.
because, in true internal peace and happiness was such a barometer of success for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you're at peace with the way that things are, with how you are, usually that's ironically when a lot of these things actually fall in place, and then things click. People, because right, even the way that I feel about the work that I'm doing, ultimately what I help people is, right, that they understand who they are, that they understand how they've always lived away from themselves, that they can accept themselves, and that they can love themselves. And if I don't do that, if I don't have that myself, I can't really find, like, I can't attract any client, right? But the moment, that's where it's so interesting, the moment that I embody it, it's not like, oh, I understand it, I understand the mechanics, blah blah blah, right? But the moment that I embody it, now I have a different resonance. I feel differently. People talk to me, and then they would say, "Oh, Sven, there's something very interesting about you. I want that." The moment, right? And that is the moment when you have the peace, when you feel the peace, when you feel like, how you say, like myself, when I'm at peace with myself. And then that's what people truly want, what people truly crave, right? So
Yeah.
find it in
Yeah.
you, and then others want to find it from you, or want to understand how you got there.
Right. Yeah. No, it's such a good reminder. I didn't know you were a tennis fan, but apparently we're going to
Oh,
be
yeah.
playing. Oh,
Oh,
it's my favorite.
yeah.
I literally just hired a tennis coach because I was like, I want to be a 5.0.
Yeah, I saw it. I
But
saw it on Instagram.
I
I
am
keep
like,
following you, man. I
yeah.
know everything about you. Lucy, Chester, I know everything.
Yeah, and I remember I wrote on my vision board one day. I was like, I want to be a professional tennis player, a world famous chef, a touring musician, and like a world famous coach. And I was like, man, that's a lot. I don't think that exists. Like, how am I supposed to be John Mayer, Francis Smallman, Novak Djokovic, and Tony Robbins all at the same time? I was like, buddy. And
Yeah.
recently, it was actually after I did that procedure. I saw the this is good enough land
Yeah.
in my body of like, I get to play tennis 3 to 5 times a week. I love cooking and I'm good at it. I
Yeah.
enjoy playing music and I get to play live music. So like I get to play out in public sometimes.
Yeah.
And like I am a great coach, like, and I was like, whoa, I was like, what just happened in my body that like
Yeah.
landed inside of me of like, man, like, not to say that I've arrived, because I don't know if we ever arrive at anything, but also like this is good enough. Like
Yeah.
this is like what I've been aiming for. And it was like, whoa.
Yeah. And
Okay.
ultimately, the place that you want to get to, right, is that you're all of that in your eyes,
Right.
right? You're the
Right.
world's greatest cook. I mean, how can you measure that anyway? But if at least you could say, I am the world's greatest cook. Like, I love the way that I cook dishes. Like,
Right.
maybe someone else doesn't really love that the way that I do,
Yeah.
but then it can land differently. And look at people like Arnold Schwarzenegger that had 3 different careers, right?
Right.
Bodybuilding, then movie star, and then governor of
Right.
California. Right? 3 very, very different things that are very far apart, and he made it work.
Right.
So I want to get an invitation to your first tennis match, and then
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
cooked for by the world's best chef, Scott Stone.
Oh, I can't wait, bro. I will have you. I will have you and Sarah here on the island sooner than later, and we'll do all those things.
I definitely want to see that place.
Oh, you would
As
love
long
it.
as there's beautiful stuff left, which I
Yes,
hope there is.
yes. It is a truly magical place, and the most magical part, like you said about Bali, is the people.
Yeah,
It's the spirit of the human that comes through here and dedicates itself to living in aloha and sharing love and spirit and all that stuff. And
yeah.
I definitely resonate with that as well. Well, Sven, I really appreciate you taking the time today to share your wisdom, to share your journey, your humor, and
Thank you, Scott.
yeah, it's been wonderful. I've had this on a list. I think I called in this podcast years ago, and I made a list in my Apple Notes. I, like you, have
Yeah,
hundreds of content ideas just
yeah,
listed out that dude, this was so helpful for me, because I was like, okay, I'm playing small, I'm playing stingy. I need to make I've got so many funny reels, dude. I can't wait. Like
yeah, man. And the
I'm
ones that you made,
yeah.
they are awesome, man. I love
Thank
them.
you. Thank you, bro. I appreciate
Mm,
that. I have
yeah,
so much
I want
fun
to see.
doing it.
I want to see more of that. Really
All right. Fair.
awesome.
Fair.
And
Yes.
yeah, uh, thank you also for hosting this, for creating this platform. And it's always a joy to speak to you. You have, I said it before we started recording, but you have this incredibly welcoming and warm energy about you that is, it's amazing to speak to you, and just because I could feel, right, the acceptance on your end.
Mm,
And that's a great gift that you can take out to this world.
mm. Thank you, brother. I really appreciate
Mm,
that. And I received that fully. So thank you for the kind words. And
amazing.
thank you for your time today, brother.
You're welcome. My
And
pleasure.
for all the listeners, thank you for giving us your time and attention and witnessing of Sven and his craft. And until the next episode, aloha. Thank you for taking the time to listen to the interview today. And if you haven't already done so, please like or follow us on whatever platform you're listening to, and let us know if you have any questions or comments or requests of future interviewees.
And we hope you find this inspiration, the clarity, and the direction to fully lean into being human, whatever that means for you. Aloha.